Welcome back. Another episode of the Whole Nine Yards. Drew PN with Brandon Krikorian here on a Sunday night. The Pittsburgh Steelers Buffalo Bills game just ended. Buffalo ended up winning 26-15. Overall, a solid week of football. We're going to probably talk about most, if not all, the games, but we'll start with the game that just ended. Brandon, initial reactions on the Bills winning 26-15.
Yeah, I think this is what we thought was going to happen when we talked about this game last week, and we both have been talking about how overrated the Steelers are and how overrated they've been this entire season. And I've been high on the Bills the entire season. You've been a little less high on them, but I think you're probably starting to turn that corner now. Maybe after this win, I don't know. We'll hear what you say after, but this is what I thought was going to happen. It was a tough game. I mean, the first quarter there was no scoring, and it was basically just 3 and outs. Each quarterback was getting hit pretty hard. The defenses were playing really good, and then second quarter, Steelers, they got out into advantage, but then it seemed like the Bills were just getting into a groove after that. And after that Steeler touchdown, the Bills had 3 touchdowns and a field goal. So I think it was more just that like the Steelers offense cannot keep up with how good their defense is. And that's something that we've known, but these last 2 weeks, it's really shown, because no matter how good your defense can play, if your offense can't put up points, then you just have no shot of winning games. And that's exactly what's happening for them. And it's probably what's going to keep happening for the rest of the season and probably the playoffs too.
They have no running game at all, really. And
yeah, they did nothing on the
ground. It showed because, like, I don't know, I just thought their runs were so, like, bleh. I don't know. And the Steelers went 1 for 10 on third down, which is not good. And time of possession, they had the ball for 24 and a half minutes, and the Bills had it for 35 minutes. So, I mean, I feel like the time of possession at least is going to come down to the run game, not be able to sustain drives, really.
And that's big. Well, I was gonna say that's with the Bills even getting a defensive touchdown. So like,
yeah,
that just shows you how big the time possession really was, because they basically had a possession where they had a possession where their offense wasn't even on the field, and the Steelers had more time. So it's not good that you can't run the ball like that.
I don't know where the Steelers go from here. I mean, it feels so weird because 2 weeks ago they were 11-0, and I want to say I had them at the second best team in the conference, and now I feel like they don't even have a chance. Like, they felt pretty helpless in this game, just not being able to run the ball. I mean, I think the running game is probably their biggest problem right now. Like, without any running, like, they have no running game. It's not even like they have like a poor running game. They just don't have one in general.
Yeah, Connor came back and he went 10 for 18.
He's not good. And it's not even necessarily all his fault either. I mean, the offensive line isn't great either. So I want to say this was Marquise Pouncey's first game back too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not a good showing from the Steelers running game.
And even so many balls. Which, I mean, like, they have good receivers, but like they drop so many balls. Like, the first play of the game was a drop, and like that's their big problem.
So that was it was the third down, right? I think it was Deontay Johnson who just dropped that pass. Right?
I think it may have even been the first play of the game. But it was whatever. It was the first play or the third down play. It was the first drive, and it just wasn't. It wasn't setting up to be a good game if you're. It was first play of the game. It was a screen to the left to Deontay Johnson. He dropped it.
He also dropped the third down pass. I know that too.
Yeah. So I think Ebron dropped a third down too. So it's been a problem for them these last couple of weeks. And if you can't run the ball and you're dropping balls, then I mean your offense is going nowhere.
Yeah, they're gonna have to start catching the ball, and they also have to start running the ball. Their defense, I mean, there's not really any problems there. They really only let up, I mean, what we'll call it 19 points to the Bills.
Yeah, you take that defensive touchdown away. So
yeah. So I mean that Bills offense is pretty good. So 19 points is not a lot. Yeah, but I mean, there's really just not much to say other than you have to start actually running the ball, and you can't be dropping passes at all. I mean, especially on third down, like in a game like this. Losing
Yeah,
two in a row is not good. And the Steelers, like their like culture is very volatile in my opinion. I worry what they're gonna start doing especially if they lose like back to back to back games. Like I'm already questioning how they're gonna handle these two back to back losses. And it's yeah, like I mean, I said that so in last week in my predictions, I said that I don't see anybody catching up to the Steelers, but I mean, the more I just watch them and yeah, like I mean, it has to change. If it doesn't change from tonight, then they're not going to be the 2 seed. They're going to lose more games.
yeah. I think most people thought that they were going to come out better this game. They came out so bad against Washington, and they've been so bad. So maybe people thought like they needed a loss to kind of get them going again, at least offensively, and they were still terrible offensively in this game. I mean, I guess the one thing that saves them is that they play the Bengals next week, and they're terrible. So I mean, maybe that can get them going a little bit. But then they play the Colts and the Browns. I
And
mean,
they get the Colts on a short week too, because they play the Bengals Monday night.
yeah, and the Colts. I mean, as we saw today, I mean, kind of going to the game a little bit. I mean, they were dominant today against the Raiders, who
Yeah.
they've been so inconsistent this year. The Raiders have been. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous how good they could play against like the Chiefs and some other teams, but then I mean they beat the Saints, they beat the Chiefs, and then they lose games. They basically obviously it's not a loss to the Jets, but I mean they should have lost that game. And this game
Yeah.
they got absolutely blown out in. So
Yeah. So I mean, I don't even know who I would take in that Colts Steelers matchup. I think I'd actually lean Colts, even though I'm not a big Colts fan, but
I would definitely lean Colts. I mean, I'm a Colts guy, so I would definitely lean Colts.
it's bad. I think, before the season, I think a lot of people, or at least I thought that this team was like, if you get unlucky, you're like a 5-win team. If you get lucky, you're like a 10-win team. I thought this team was going to be like 8-8, 9-7, the Steelers. And I think they're just now starting to show that, I mean, they're not an 11-win team, like, which was what they are now. I really don't think they are.
Yeah, I think they just overperformed earlier in the year. Like they're more of like a 8-win team right now. Probably, right?
Overperformed, and I think they caught teams in inopportune times. I mean, like the Ravens and like the Titans. Not to mention, I mean, the Titans probably should have won that game, but yeah, I don't think this team's that good. I could even see them losing week 1 in the wild card. Like at this point, I don't know. Maybe it's just like this is just recency bias speaking, but yeah, like that's a bad loss. That's a bad loss. I was expecting the Steelers offense to at least look a little bit better. Like the whole week, it was like the Steelers can't run and the receivers can't catch the ball. So I was anticipating this week maybe they'd work on that a little bit or something. And I mean, it was just as bad, if not worse. So that was horrible.
That's all I really had on Pittsburgh there.
Okay, so I mean,
Well,
right.
I was gonna say something about I thought we were gonna go Colts after. That's kind of
Well, just I mean, you could have just said like moving to the Colts, like
yeah.
just don't be afraid to like if you just don't want to say anything, like don't because like if you don't say anything, that's what we're gonna end up doing anyways. So it's just like just don't be afraid to just like bring it back to the Colts or whatever. Like it's not a big deal.
All right, so I was just gonna go Colts and then all right, yeah. Okay, I was gonna do that. All right. Wait, let me just pull it up real quick. All right. Yeah. So speaking of the Colts, like I was saying earlier, so they beat the Raiders pretty convincingly, 44-27, and it actually made the Raiders fire the defensive coordinator after the game. And yeah, like I've been high on the Colts the entire year, and it seems that they're been hitting their stride these last 2 weeks. Obviously, they had that terrible loss to the Titans a couple weeks ago, but they're still in the tiebreaker with um, the Titans. They're 1-1 head to head. So, and right now they're tied at both 9-4 for the division. And we've been talking about it, but I feel like the Colts are the better team than the Titans. I don't know why. I do like Tannehill more than Rivers, and I like Henry as like an offensive piece more than the Colts offensive pieces. But I think the Colts defense is just so much better than the Titans defense. And I think that Rivers, even though I'm not as high on him, he's been playing better this year than he has in the last couple of years when he's been with the Chargers. So for some reason, I just think the Colts are just a better team, and I mean that's why I picked them to win the division. And again, these last 3 weeks, they play Texans, Steelers, and Jags. I mean, in my mind, that's 3 wins, but at worst 2-1. Which again, I think that can get you the division. That's who the Titans do, but I think they're just playing better than the Titans are.
I'm not willing to say that they're necessarily playing better than the Titans are. I think they're very, very, very even right now. I mean, they split their division matchups this week. They both, and I know the Jaguars are not comparable to the Raiders, but they both won their games. I mean, they were never really in doubt for the most part. I'm not going to say that the Colts are like objectively better than the Titans yet. I still think schedule wise, I mean, they're pretty even. Colts, like you said, Texans, Steelers, Jags, Titans. It's pretty close to the same thing. Lions, Packers, Texans. I mean, that's pretty close. I mean, it could go anyway. It could go either way. I'm still gonna ride with the Titans for the division crown. But yeah, I mean, the Colts defense definitely better than Titans defense. I'm still taking the Titans offense over the Colts offense though, and I don't know that it's by as wide of a margin, but I'm still taking them, and I still think that overall the Titans are a better team. Looking at the Raiders, so after that Chiefs game, I've gone back to that Chiefs game a couple episodes now, but I just thought that this was going to be like their year to be on the come up or whatever, and make one of those wild card teams or wild card spots, and potentially go on to beat a Tennessee in the wild card round, or go on to beat an Indianapolis. And I mean, ever since that KC game, basically they've proven that that's not the case. I want to say the Raiders have played 3 games since that game, and it's been the Atlanta game, the Jets game, and this game. Yes, that is the case. So
Yeah,
in the past 3 games, they've gotten blown out 43-6. They beat the Jets because the Jets basically let them win that game. Like, I don't know how, I couldn't see it any other way. And then the Colts game, I mean, they got flattened by the Colts. So I mean, I'm gonna just assume the Raiders are done this year. Maybe I'm wrong on that. They still have a very plausible shot at the playoffs. It's not likely, but I mean, they have a chance at least. They'd probably have to win out. Pretty sure they probably would have to win out at this point. But yeah, I mean, John Gruden, I still think he's a top 10 to 15 coach in the league. I still think that at worst he's like a slightly above average or maybe average coach. So I'm not worried about Gruden. Is Carr the man for this job? I still don't really know the answer to.
I mean that's what I was wondering.
I mean, I don't know.
Well,
Like,
I looked at the contract, and I think he's under contract for another 2 years past this one till he's a free agent. So, and he's getting paid a lot of money. So, I mean, it's tough though because he's definitely not a quarterback who's gonna like make your overall team better and like lift you up. He's like a good quarterback, for like 9-7, possibly a 10-6. But if they were to make the playoffs, they'd probably just get bounced in the first round. But I don't, I don't think it's so. At some point, he's going to have to find his quarterback because even though he signed like a 10-year contract as the coach, I mean, like if they're not performing, he's going to get fired. So he knows that he needs his quarterback at some point. I don't know if that's going to be in this draft. I mean, there's potentially 5 first-round quarterbacks in this draft. So, I mean, if they really like someone, they could take someone. But would he even be better than Carr to lead you to get to like 11, 12 wins. I don't know. I guess you do that. They'd have to figure that out and see if one guy can actually step in right away and be that guy. Maybe sit a couple games and come in halfway through the season. But
Ultimately, Gruden's
they're
call.
gonna have to figure something out because
I think
they're gonna have to figure something out because they're a 500 team with Carr, and that's not going to be good enough to get into the playoffs. So
yeah, I mean, to win a Super Bowl with Carr, your overall roster has to be better, without a doubt. And, I think they have to make a decision. Do we want to be a team like maybe kind of like the Niners, where their actual roster is just so good and their quarterback doesn't have to carry the team? Or do they want to be like whatever, like the Seahawks, where their quarterback is insanely good and their roster doesn't have to be as good? And I don't know, like, is it harder to find the quarterback, or is it harder to actually build a roster that is so dominant that you don't need a top 5 quarterback in the league to make the Super Bowl? I mean, knowing Gruden, I don't think he's gonna want to stick with Carr. I mean, if you've watched any of the Gruden camps he used to do back with ESPN, the quarterback camps, I mean, he always manages to find a way to like one quarterback from every draft. And whether it's, I don't know if his drafting skills will be hit or miss, but I think in his mind he is set on a new quarterback. I don't think he wants to stick with Carr. I think ideally Gruden wants a top 5 quarterback in the league where he can do everything he wants with the playbook, and they have one of the best offenses in the league, and Gruden's praised as a offensive like genius, if you want to call it, like an Andy Reid type. And I don't know if he'll ever get to that level, but I think that's what he wants. I think he wants to have an elite offense, and I mean, it's possible. I think it really depends on how their record ends up. If they end up as like 8-8, I mean, they're gonna be able to probably draft a quarterback in the first round. Now, it's not going to be Trevor Lawrence, not going to be Justin Fields, but maybe you can trade up for some other quarterback that's not them. I don't know exactly who Gruden likes, but yeah.
I mean, there's a Sam Howell, there's a Trey Lance. These are guys who are going to go. Zach Wilson possibly. I mean, these are guys who are going to go in the first round for quarterbacks who aren't going to be like the top picks. They'll still be mid first round picks, but if you end up 8-8, 9-7, you could definitely grab one of those guys. But I mean, I agree with you. I think he definitely wants a quarterback to come in. So I like their roster. So if they make a couple more additions, maybe like a second, third round draft picks, guys who can fill up needs for them, I think they have a good enough roster at least to make the playoffs and maybe win a round. It comes down to the quarterback, and I just don't think Carr can win multiple playoff games. And I don't know if a rookie quarterback could do it either, but I feel like you had to take a chance with a rookie quarterback at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think their overall roster is elite enough to the point where they can afford to stick with Carr at this point. If they did have an elite roster, then sure. But I mean, this is proof that, I mean, they're probably gonna, if they keep Carr, they're probably just gonna keep doing the same thing, which is like 8-8, 9-7, 10-6. If you're lucky, 11-5. If you're unlucky, 6-10. Like, it's not a place you necessarily want to be in the NFL. I would move on. I think Trey Lance is an interesting name for somebody like Gruden. I think Gruden may want the chance to take somebody that's raw, but I mean, super talented. Lance only played one game this year. I think he only played one game this year. But I mean, his arm talent, he's amazing. I mean, does he have like the brain to be an NFL quarterback? Does he have the discipline? I mean, who knows? That's what, Gruden's there to find out if he wants to draft him or not, but at least physically he's 100% there. That would be an interesting pick for John Gruden to take for sure.
Yeah, I think we're both in agreement that they probably need a new starter quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would move on. We'll move off the Las Vegas Raiders though. We'll move on to I didn't have my thing. All right. We'll We'll move off the Raiders. We'll talk about the upset of the week. The Philadelphia Eagles beats the New Orleans Saints 24-21. Overall, it was, for me, a very fun game to watch. As you know, well, as you may not know, actually, I predicted that the Green Bay Packers would be the number 1 seed, and I predicted this a week, or literally not even a week ago. So it's like, I mean, it's not like I called it since day one, but I did predict that they would take it over from the Saints, and this loss definitely helps that prediction out. Overall, I would say the Saints just kind of came out flat at the start. Jalen Hurts didn't amaze. I think they went out to a 17-0 lead. Miles Sanders had a solid day. He had a breakout run for like what I think was an 82-yard run in the second quarter. Overall, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll get your first impressions on it, but I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles necessarily played a super awesome game. I would say it's more just the Saints they came out flat and they just kind of didn't play well. But
Yeah, I look at it more as the Saints not coming and playing to their full potential. I think the Eagles got a spark out of Hurts, and I think that's why they went out to the 17-0 lead. Like, it was just something different that no one's seen Hurts play, so you're not really sure how to defend him. But as you can see, as the game went on, he definitely started struggling more. He only finished 17-30 passing, so he's barely over 50%. He had 100 yards on the ground, though, which is I was actually pretty impressed with. I didn't think he'd have 100+ yards on the ground. I mean, obviously he could run, but I didn't really think he could run like that, which is something that Wentz can't do, at least, design run plays for the quarterback. But yeah, I look at it more through the Saints. Like, you picked the Packers to be the 1 seed, and I picked the Saints. I was thinking this game was going to be a win, and they would have Breeze back for next week against the Chiefs, which would be a tough game, which they possibly could win. But in my mind, I kind of already looked at that as a loss. So for them losing this game, they're really going to need to win next week's game against the Chiefs in order to 1 seed, because it's right now it seems like the Packers are definitely in line to get that 1 seed, and the Saints, I would say the Saints need it way more than the Packers do, just because Breeze is coming off the injury, and you don't know how he's going to play when he comes back. So if you get that bye week, it's just another week of rest for him, which could be huge for the playoffs for him, because this is most likely his last year. He's probably going to retire after the year. I mean, maybe not, but most likely. So them not getting that 1 seed is going to be huge. And I mean, the report is that he's going to come back next week, but I mean, I'm not really sure if he is. If he doesn't, there's no way they win that game. Taysom Hill is not the quarterback. Just watching him play, he's just not that good at quarterback. He could be the utility guy, that's fine, but him at quarterback, he's just not a good enough quarterback.
I mean, he can be like the gadget. I mean, he can be what he has been, which is like a gadget guy. If you need him to, he can perfectly, he could be your backup quarterback, like, easily.
Well, yeah, he could be a backup quarterback, yeah, but not a starting quarterback.
Well, what I'm saying, yeah, he can be your backup quarterback. He can come in for multiple plays. Like, he's a better wildcat quarterback, if you want to call it like that. I like, it saves you the roster spot. Like, if you didn't have Jameis Winston here, like, you would be totally fine with Taysom Hill as your backup. Now, I guess there is kind of a chance he gets hurt in the game and then Drew Brees gets hurt, but I mean, I don't really think I think you'd be fine with just Brees and Taysom Hill there. If you really care about that, I feel like that's something that it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I mean, Taysom Hill's definitely not the quarterback for this team right now, or in my opinion, going forward. Sean Payton's in a very interesting scenario because, I mean, could he just leave New Orleans? Like, I don't know the contract situation. I haven't done any research on it.
I think he signed an extension before this year started.
I mean, he could just want to get traded too.
He could leave. I mean, what were you thinking? Where do you think he'd get traded?
So if Brees retires and Peyton's like, all right, my defense is fine, but I also don't have a quarterback, and Michael Thomas, if he doesn't get back to shape this year, he'd be like, all right, well, Michael Thomas is probably at this point a shell of himself, potentially. I'd rather just go to a contender or a better team with an actual quarterback. I mean, I don't know. Like, do the Bucks fire Bruce Arians? Do Would he want to go to the Cowboys? Right now, probably not. But if they actually had an actual team, then yeah, for sure. Um, I would assume that if he's getting traded, uh, the Saints would have to trade him to a team that Peyton wants to coach for. So Peyton would have kind of a choice on where he wants to go. Other than that, I'm sure there's probably other places that I'm not thinking about. Would you want to go to Los Angeles to coach the Chargers? I mean, probably not, but at least you have Herbert there. I think, maybe he's just too old to want to coach there. Like, I don't know if he cares about the young quarterback. Maybe he just wants to go to a contender, and maybe the Saints are a contender. I mean, they were just the number one seed. They're 8-0 or whatever. Well, actually, sorry, like 8-1 with backup quarterbacks at this point. I mean, I could definitely see Peyton staying, but what do you think?
I mean, I would say he stays, but it would definitely be interesting if Breeze does retire, which I think he probably will, because I mean they've been in New Orleans together the entire time, and like even they're now 8-1 with backups when Breeze is playing. They don't really have a quarterback for the future, and I mean, if they don't trust Jameis enough to start these games, then there's no way they trust him to be the quarterback going into next year. And I'm not really sure who they would replace Breeze with. You're not going to go Taysom Hill again. I mean, I wouldn't think you'd do that. Doesn't seem like they'd go Winston as their quarterback.
Voice crack.
So, yeah, I know. All right, wait, made me fucking forget what I was going to say. They're not. I'll just start from sure. They're not going to go with Taysom Hill at quarterback again, I would assume, and it doesn't seem like they'd go with. Not going to start him in these games, so like, who would they go with? Like, would there be like a free agent out there that? I mean, they're still like a really good team to the point where like you put an average to like good quarterback, like a top 15 quarterback in that, but more towards like 13, 14, 15 in that offense, you could definitely still make the playoffs, but you're definitely not winning a Super Bowl. So like it'll definitely be interesting because
I mean, are you definitely not winning a Super Bowl?
If you have
like defense, I mean, if they play this way,
I mean, they haven't won one with Breeze since, was it 2009? Was that 2008? Whatever that year was.
Yeah.
And I mean, their defense has been one of the top defenses the last 4 years, and they've made it to the championship game, but they haven't even made it to the Super Bowl yet. And I think Breeze is probably your best option, unless, I mean, who else would it be to be your quarterback?
Well, I don't know that you can always say it like that. Like, you could, I mean, just because you didn't make the Super Bowl with Breeze doesn't mean that you can't with a quarterback that even may be worse than him. I mean, it just comes down to, I mean, if the roster's better next year, and I don't know, like the Niners made it with Garoppolo.
Have a better chance. Yeah, but I would say you have a better chance with Breeze than any other guy who would be available going into next year.
Well, if Breeze retires, and it's not an option, but yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. Like, I mean, do you think he's going to retire?
Yeah, I think he's done after this year.
Yeah, that's what I think too. So I mean, they'd have to find a replacement. And I'm saying
from the veteran quarterbacks, like, who would you want? Like, if you had to choose one. Like Garoppolo, Carr. I mean, I guess Winston.
Dalton. Well, what I was saying is, I don't think they trust. I don't think they go Newton, but I don't think they even trust. Like, here are the free agent quarterbacks next year. So, Jacoby Brissett, Mitchell Trubisky, Fitzpatrick, Tyrod Taylor, Andy Dalton. I mean, there's Dak, but I don't really assume that he's actually going to be a free agent. Jameis, Cam. I mean, I don't know. Do any of those guys sound better than Drew Brees?
I would say Mitch Trubisky. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, if they could fix him, possibly, but
no, there's no way. No,
if you were being serious.
No, I mean, obviously Trubisky's garbage. He's done. I mean, probably not. But I will also say Breeze may, over the past 4 years, he's probably been a top 10 quarterback. But in his playoff games, has he been a top 10 quarterback? I mean, I don't know that I'm willing to say that, especially last year against the Vikings in the wild card round. So if you have a quarterback that can, if you had Carr, and Carr's the 13th best quarterback in the league ish in the regular season, but in the playoffs he can play like the 8th best quarterback. Well, since the playoffs have less teams, I don't know. Whatever the 8th best quarterback, like you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
top 25% quarterback in the playoffs. I mean, is that not a team that can win the Super Bowl?
I think it could. But Carr would have to play like that, and we've never seen him.
I mean, we've seen flashes.
We've seen that like that MVP year that he had, which he got injured in. It seemed like he was going to win the MVP, but he did get injured, and then he didn't get to play in the playoffs, and then they lost in the first round. So, and that was a couple years ago now. That was like 3-4 years ago. So, and he really hasn't been able to return to that form. So
that was like 5 years ago, but yeah.
All right. Well, even that just makes my point even more.
I know.
Like, I don't think that he'd even I don't think he can even get close to that anymore.
I would probably agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably agree. I mean, I just don't know what you do. Like, do you take a veteran in for a year, draft a quarterback, and then after that year, you put the young guy in? I mean,
it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Honestly, like.
So what are you doing then? Are you drafting a quarterback and then also bringing in a veteran, or are you just starting the young guy from day one? Or
in the situation that Breeze retires, I would say you have to look at the veterans first because your team is still good enough to win, at least get to the Super Bowl and definitely win the Super Bowl. But
is Alex Smith a free agent?
Contract extension got Washington.
I would say
I'm not sure if he will. I can look at it right now, but
I would say you can look it up if you can find it. I would say if I'm Peyton or the Saints, no matter what, if Breeze retires or not, I'm drafting a quarterback. Assuming there's one that you even like a little bit, which I'm sure there will be. Doesn't matter really what round. I would assume probably in the 2nd to 4th, you can find a guy. Maybe if you have to trade up in the 1st for a guy you really like, then do it. If Breeze doesn't retire, cool. He plays another year. If he does retire, I would look to bring in a veteran that isn't stubborn and would be willing to kind of be a mentor to the rookie quarterback, and kind of like that Alex Smith role where, you know, he's not cocky and arrogant to the point where he's just not going to talk to the rookie because it's his job or whatever. Like I would want a veteran that is going to play well first and foremost, but also is going to share some knowledge and be a helpful resource to whatever quarterback I draft. I don't know if.
Yeah, and again, that's a decision that they're going to make.
I mean, like, so in my opinion, I don't think Derek Carr would be bad. I don't know that Jimmy Garoppolo would be great. I think Garoppolo is looking for a place to start. I don't think he's like a solidified backup guy or a guy that starts for a year and then is a backup. I think Dalton's at that point. Like, I mean, would Dalton take a 1-year contract or 2-year contract with the Saints? I don't see why not. It's probably one of the only starting jobs he might be able to get. I don't know if the Saints would want Dalton, but I know Dalton would not be, you know, if Dalton lost his job midway, I know he wouldn't be throwing a hissy fit. And I don't know that I could say the same for somebody like Cam Newton. If you brought Cam Newton out, I don't know. Garoppolo, honestly, I don't know about that either. So, I mean, it is going to be interesting to see what they do.
And on Alex Smith's contract, he does have an opt-out after this year, but on his extension, he does have 2 years after this year, but he could opt out after this season if he wanted to.
I mean, is he gonna though?
I'm not sure if he would. It'd be interesting to see, like, if the Saints offered him a starting job, I could definitely see him opting out. Like, if he knew that, you know, Breeze was going to retire and that, you know, like the potential or the opportunity was there for him to start in New Orleans. I mean, I could definitely see it. I don't know if the Saints would go that way or not, but I could definitely see him opting out at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that too, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But so we're talking about the Saints, but also the Packers game. So again, you picked the Packers to be the 1 seed. I picked them to be the 2 seed. They won today against the Lions. They won 31-24. It was definitely not as close of a game. I mean, it was definitely a close game, but it kind of seemed like the Packers kind of had the game in hand through most of the way. It didn't really seem like the Lions were ever really going to come back, like ever take the lead or anything like that. And Rodgers, I mean, there's something that we haven't really been talking a lot, but Rodgers, he may be the MVP number one candidate over Mahomes. I don't know what
There's
you
a
think about it.
chance. I would say probably right now, yeah. I mean, they're the one seed in the NFC. The Chiefs are also the one seed, so I mean that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But if the Packers were the two seed, the Chiefs the one seed, it'd be a little bit harder to go with Rodgers over Mahomes. But I mean, statistically, Rodgers just went 26 for 33 with 290 yards and 3 touchdowns. I know Mahomes threw 3 interceptions. Let me just pull up the stats real quick. It was 24 for 34, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. By no means the worst day ever, but for an MVP candidate to throw 3 interceptions in one game, I mean, it's not great. I mean, yeah, I would say they're neck and neck at this point. If you said Mahomes over Rodgers, I would not disagree. If you said Rodgers over Mahomes, I'm not going to disagree. I think we will have a clear-cut candidate by the end of the year, though. We've got 3 more games, and I think we'll find out. I ultimately think Mahomes will win the MVP, but I don't know.
If
Maybe I'm
they're
wrong.
if they're like similar in numbers and they both finish, let's say they both finish with over, let's say they both finish at least 13-3, which seems like they both will. I mean, the Packers are 10-3, so they might finish 12-4. Let's say they're both a one seed in the AFC and NFC, and their stats are pretty similar. I think they give it to Rodgers because this is probably like his last chance to win an MVP. I would say like Mahomes, he's gonna have another 10, 15 years of playing and be at a top level. And I
It
would
may
say
depend on the
Rodgers.
Chiefs' record, though. Like if the Chiefs
I mean,
go
if the
15 and
Chiefs don't lose a
one,
game, you're right, and I would be Mahomes. But if they both have like 2 losses, I mean, the Packers already have 3 losses, and the Chiefs have 1 loss. I mean, the Chiefs finish if they're let's say the Chiefs are 14-2 and the Packers are 13-3, and their stats are pretty similar, but there's not much difference between them. I think they'd give it to Rodgers. That's what I think.
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. The storyline's probably better. I also
Yeah.
think that the voters may have a slight bias towards Mahomes just because Mahomes prior to this year has been slightly better as well. Maybe not. I don't know. I still think Mahomes has overall probably been the better quarterback. Statistically, this game's not as great. There was a period where the Chiefs did run the ball like a lot, and Mahomes was not throwing the ball as much. But ultimately, I mean, I still think Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now, and I don't know that it's.
There's no doubt in that.
And for me, if it's at all close, I'm just going to vote for the person that I know is the better quarterback, and it's Mahomes. So, yeah, I mean, but I could see it either way. It really depends. But yeah, if the Chiefs do go 15 and one, it's going to be really tough to give it to anybody but Mahomes, and that's crazy if they go 15 and one because that means their only loss of the year was to the Raiders. And I mean, yeah.
That would be, and they definitely could. I mean, they play Saints, Falcons, and then Chargers. So, I mean, you kind of assume Falcons, Chargers are most likely wins. I mean, maybe the Chargers game, like if they have the one seed wrapped up at that point, they may just rest some players. They may lose that game, but yeah, if he plays well against the Saints and the Falcons, I could definitely. I think it would just be close. I think it really just depends on if the Packers lose again. If the Packers are 12-4, and let's say the Chiefs are 14-2, I'd probably give it to Mahomes at that point. Like if it's a 2-win gap between their win totals, it'd be tough for Rodgers to win it.
And this is kind of unrelated. I agree with that. This is kind of unrelated, but I mean, let's say that the Chiefs go 15 and one and they win the Super Bowl again. Like, I mean, this might just be the start of another dynasty, of another Patriots. I mean, because Mahomes has just been so good since I don't think anybody's ever been better than Mahomes for the first 3 years of his career, 4 years of his career, whatever.
No, I don't think it's close.
I don't even think it's close. Yeah, it's really
especially
not.
with the Super Bowl, and let's say he doesn't win MVP, you still have one MVP, and let's say he wins the Super Bowl too, he'll have like 2 Super Bowls, most likely 2 Super Bowl MVPs and a regular season MVP. Yeah, it's not even close.
I mean, there's a real I mean, I don't think Mahomes is going to have Andy Reid for his whole career, but yeah. And if they win the Super Bowl, then I mean, this team might go down as one of the most dominant of all time, if not maybe the most. Going 15-1, it would depend on their playoff road is, but right now I really just don't think there's many teams that are going to be able to really be competitive with the Chiefs. And the AFC right now, the only team I really could say would be the Bills. If the Titans are able to just run the heck out of the ball and the Chiefs only get it for 20 minutes, then like they could maybe compete, but I would still think they lose because Mahomes is just so good and that offense has so much talent on it. And the NFC, I mean, there's the Saints. I'm sure if Breeze is back, they have like a puncher's chance. Same with the Packers, but I still think this Chiefs team is so much better than every team right now, and it's somewhat frightening because I think they're just going to end up being so good. And there's nothing stopping them in next year either. So like they could legitimately just three-peat. I mean, you could technically say that about any team, but I feel like they easily could. I mean, there's nothing stopping this Chiefs team.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see when their team overall isn't as good as it is right now. Like you'll still have Mahomes, but like let's say in like 5 years, I mean, their team's not going to be as good as it is right now, like just salary cap wise, and just you're going to lose people to free agency, injuries, everything. So it'd be interesting to see when their team isn't as good and see how well he's performing and what their record is. I'd still think they'd be like a playoff team, even if they have like an average team, like at least defensively. Maybe some of their key weapons offensively aren't there. But like right now, like not only is Mahomes the best, but I mean, they have so many guys on offensive defense that you could say are the number one player at their position. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I would say I feel like they're gonna have Tyreek Hill and Kelsey for a while. Maybe I'm just wrong on that, but I mean, I've been a Hill guy for a while, honestly. I mean, in my opinion, I would say Hill. Maybe I'm not even a Hill guy if I say this, but I would say Hill is a top 4 receiver. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I really don't think I am though. Like,
I think he's
he's
I think he
different,
probably is a
but
top 4 or top 5 receiver in the league, but for specific team needs across the league, I would say he's the number 1 wide receiver. Like if you were to put a wide receiver on like what you take the wide receiver and for that team how well he fits, Tyreek Hill is number 1 out of all the wide receivers, I would
yeah,
say.
I mean, yeah, he fits so well in this Chiefs offense, and so does Kelsey. Yeah, I don't know what I obviously anything can happen on Sunday. Like there's I mean, yeah, like the Seahawks lost to the Giants, the Cardinals just beat the Giants. Like, I mean, anything, but yeah, this Chiefs team is so good, and there's no Belichick anymore, so rip
Well,
that.
I guess we'll see. We never know what could happen next year, but um,
Yeah,
but you mentioned the Giants, so I think we should talk Giants because this is kind of my team for the rest of the season. Obviously, my Cowboys are done, so I picked the Giants to win the division, the NFC East, and this week they started off with the Cardinals. Cardinals have been struggling. Murray's injured. At least, I mean, it seems like he's injured. I would say that he definitely is. And Cardinals had lost 4 out of 5 of their last games, and really should have lost all 5 because the one game they won was the Hail Mary pass. And obviously, if that doesn't happen, then they lose that game. So they've been really struggling. They're going into New York. Daniel Jones just came back, which maybe shouldn't have come back. Maybe it was too early. It was only a week after what seemed like a pretty bad hamstring pull. And they had absolutely nothing going offensively. They lost 26-7. I can't really blame their defense. I mean, their defense is pretty good in this game. I would say it's definitely a top 5 defense in the league, but their offense was terrible in this game. And that's not the game that you need going into the schedule that they have with Browns, Ravens, and then I mean Cowboys last week. But those next 2 games are like nightmare games.
I think I got caught up in the Giants having a couple nice wins, and I can't make that mistake again. I don't know. Maybe now I'm caught up in the line and the Giants having one bad loss. I'm thinking it's the end of the world. Uh, I am regretting picking the Giants to win this division. I forgot that I don't like Daniel Jones. I just forgot that. I remember it now, though. this Cardinals team is not bad. They have struggled for sure, but Murray, when healthy and when he's playing well, I mean, he's up there in quarterback ranking. Like he is top 10 for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. When
And
he's healthy,
he's
definitely.
gonna
Yeah.
be top 5 eventually. He might even be inching there right now. Like who would you this is a random kind of unrelated, but who would you rather have, like Murray or Watson? We'll just say right
Well,
now, like right now for the next
like
for the
just the
remainder of this
quarterback,
year.
not thinking about team.
Yeah,
Like not thinking about team.
correct.
Man, that's tough because I really like Watson too. I like
I
both of
do as
them a
well. I
lot.
do as well.
I just think I think Watson's, and again, it could be because of the team, but he just tries to do too much, which costs him, and he tries to make the big play every time. And I know, and Murray tries to do it too, but I think he's just a little bit smarter. So I'd probably go Murray,
I would probably agree.
but
I
it's like
think
50, it's like
Watson.
51-49, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I don't know if it's a team or not, but yeah, I mean Watson can get careless at times. He tries to go for it all. He tries to do too much. Murray can be the same way, like you said, but he's slightly smarter. And I think, I mean, he's got more room to grow. I mean, he's been in the league for less amount of time, so I think Murray's only going to get better. Watson's only going to get better as well. Though I do think Murray's the type of guy that could win 2 MVPs. I mean, Watson could win one. I don't know that Watson wins like multiple though. I don't know if he's that type of like player, if that makes sense. I think
I think Murray is that kind of player.
like in 10 years, I think we'll see Murray as an objectively better quarterback than Watson. Uh, and it
And he
leads me
can
to
run the ball
just
too.
sorry.
And he can run the ball like way more effectively.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he's super quick. And I just leaves me to, I mean, one, the NFC West is so good, and I know we talk about this all the time, but it really is. I mean, I think the Rams. I don't know how long they're going to be great for, but right now they're still great. I still think the Seahawks and the Cardinals are always, with these two quarterbacks now, they're going to be perennial like playoff contenders for the next while. And I know Wilson's not young, but Wilson's still going to be an MVP candidate for the next probably at least 4 or 5 years, honestly. Maybe that's a little bit too much, like a little bit high. Maybe he just falls off within the next 3 years because he's like what 31, I think.
I think he's either 30 or 31. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he's not an MVP contender for the next 5 or 6 years, but he's still. I mean, he's still going to be an elite quarterback for at least the next 2 or 3, and then a top 10 quarterback for probably the next 5 or 6. Because he doesn't necessarily need his legs all that much. I mean, he needs them, but he doesn't rely on them as nearly as much as like even a Murray or obviously like a Lamar. Uh, but yeah, I mean this NFC West is ridiculous. I think the Niners actually might be the team that's in the worst shape, but I mean it just comes down to the fact they don't have their quarterback. I don't know. I think Garoppolo might be around the same talent level as Goff, but if the Niners don't like Garoppolo, then that means they don't have a quarterback right now. And if they don't have a quarterback for next year, that's not going to be good. I mean, I guess there's no way for them not to, because there's no reason they would get rid of Garoppolo and then not bring anybody else in. But I mean, we'll see on that. I'm not sure whether or not picking Vikings over Cardinals was the right call at this point. I mean, they're 6-7 now. The Cardinals are 7-6. I did think the Vikings were going to lose to the Bucks. But I predicted the Vikings would beat the Saints after in 2 weeks from now. So I got that has to happen for sure. And the Cardinals have
Yeah,
to
that's
lose
like your
another
game.
game. That's my game, and it needs to happen.
Yeah.
See, the thing is I was not expecting the Saints to lose to the Eagles this week. I kind of just, well, I just thought that they were going to have like a loss somewhere. And I thought the Vikings were that weak, but I guess the Eagles was the loss. Maybe they have another one. Who knows?
The only thing that's going to hurt you is that since they lost this game, and I mean, they're most likely going to lose that Chiefs game. Let's say they lose that Chiefs game. I think they're going to blow the Vikings out. There's no way they're going to lose 3 games in a row at the end of
Yeah.
the season. So
Yeah.
you for you and the Vikings pick, you better hope that they can beat the Chiefs, just so that because if they lose 2 in a row, there's no way they're losing that Vikings game. If they beat the Chiefs, the Vikings at least have a chance to win that game.
Yeah. I think my Vikings pick might just be down the drain. Maybe not down the drain, but it's gonna be tough.
My Washington pick is looking great right now.
Your Washington wild card pick. I mean,
Maybe even division pick, but
you didn't pick them to win the division.
well,
so.
yeah, but I did pick them to get into the playoffs, though.
You picked them to get in as a wild card team.
I did pick them as a wild card, but it's still not out of the table that the Giants win the division. But the Washington football team, they do seem like a real team. Now Smith did get injured, which does not help. Is Haskins? He came in, he was terrible. He's just not a good quarterback at all. But if Smith
what a bust of a pick! What a bust!
It's a terrible pick. But if Smith can come back and be I think it was the leg. I'm not sure if it was the leg that he had the injury with or not. I know it was the right leg. I'm not. I think the leg that he injured was his left leg, so I think it's the other one. But if he can just come back and be at least 85, 90%, then they're looking good. But if he's going to be out maybe a week or two, or he's just not going to be even 80, 70%, they're going to struggle, because even though they're not great offensively, you'd so much rather have Smith than Haskins.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I actually think the Giants have a higher ceiling than Washington, probably purely because of the quarterback, but I think they also have a lot lower floor because, we know Alex Smith. We know provided he's somewhat healthy, we know what we're going to get out of him. We know what he won't be, we know what he won't be. He won't be the guy that makes the plays to win the game, but we know he also won't be the guy that throws 3 interceptions on wild card weekend is the sole reason you lose. Jones could be the guy that makes a play that helps you win a game, but he could also be the guy that throws 3 picks on wild card weekend and you get blown out by Seattle or whatever team. So yeah, I actually still think the Giants have a good shot to win this division. I'm fine with my Giants division winning pick. I think there's a solid chance the Giants win next week against the Browns. We'll see about that one, but
they're gonna need Jones to play like he's a top pick in the draft, like he was, because this could be the end of Daniel Jones if he doesn't play well these last couple games. And let's say they miss the playoffs.
Let's say they even make the playoffs. Let's say they make the playoffs. Even if they make the playoffs, Daniel Jones does not have to play well for them to make the playoffs at this point. He can play mediocre, how he's kind of I don't know, he could play a not top pick and they could get into the playoffs at 7-9 or whatever.
But the thing is, they're gonna have to score against these teams.
Well, yeah, obviously.
I know, but what I'm saying is playing the Browns, who have their defense isn't great, but it's good enough, and the Ravens, who have a really good defense. They're going to have to score at least 25 points in those games, I would say, even with how good their defense is.
Okay, fine.
They have to score 20 plus points, let's say, at the least.
Sure. Even if that happens and they make the playoffs, if Jones does not play well in the wild card round and they lose, we've seen how willing teams are able to move off their quarterback. The Cardinals are the one that comes right off the top of your head. Would you, if let's say they make the playoffs and they lose in the wild card round, and would you move off Daniel Jones? I would not be mad with moving off Daniel Jones at this point, honestly. Especially if you're the Giants and you like Joe Judge as the coach, and Joe Judge is I don't like Daniel Jones. I'd be all right, we'll find somebody else.
Well, I think there's 2 things. I think it comes down to who's available, whether draft or free agency. I think you still go young quarterback. Your team's young, your coach is young. I don't think you don't need a veteran. You're not that kind of team yet. But I would say you keep him going into next year, assuming there's no amazing options that can replace him.
Well, there's no reason to get rid of him. But
no, but I'm even bench him. I'm saying, but I think you start him going into his year 3, but it's like you have to put him on notice and saying like if you don't start playing well, then you're not going to be here after the next year, or you're going to get benched halfway through the season, and you're probably not going to ever be the starting quarterback for the New York Giants again. So it's going to be on him to improve, because if he doesn't improve going into next year, then he's not going to be the quarterback for the Giants in the future.
I would be totally fine with the Giants drafting a quarterback, maybe not the first round. That's a lot of stock to put in a quarterback that if you're not going to completely get rid of Jones, and by that I mean like bench him, like you may not want to put 2 first round quarterbacks competing against each other. But like, I mean, when the Washington football team, when they drafted RG3, they drafted Cousins in the same draft. Obviously Jones has already been drafted, but you could draft a quarterback in the 3rd round this year and have them go at it, and that either sparks something in Jones or it doesn't. Regardless, you at least have something no matter what happens. If Jones plays bad, you have somebody else with some potential. If Jones plays well, whoever your quarterback is that you drafted in the 3rd round potentially builds up some trade value. I mean, that's kind of what happened in Garoppolo's situation, and Jones isn't Brady, but a lot of times if you draft a quarterback and they just kind of back up, and especially if Jones is the reason, like if Jones wins that job and he plays really well, then there's no proof that backup quarterback drafted in the 3rd round is like not good or whatever. So like you can't really lose is what I'm saying.
And it's kind of like this. It's basically the situation that happened in Philly. You have Wentz, who looked really good at the beginning of his career, but then he had injuries, and then his play started declining. Then they took Hurts this year in the 2nd round, and it was like, it's like, people, do you really think you're going to move off Wentz when you just signed this contract? But it was kind of like, you got to start playing better. He obviously wasn't playing better. They put Hurts in. Now I don't think he's like an NFL quarterback or anything like that. I don't think he's like the face of the, like, he's not going to be like the quarterback for the future, at least not in my eyes. But they beat the Saints, which I don't think anyone thought that they were going to. And if Wentz was starting that game, there's no way they were going to win that game.
Yeah, no way.
And the Giants could definitely do the same thing. Take a guy in the 3rd, 4th round, like a developmental piece. And if Jones plays good, then you have Jones. And if he doesn't play good, then you have this guy for the future. So they definitely could do that, yeah.
Looking at specifically Wentz, just talking about him getting dealt, I mean, this isn't necessarily related either, but I guess we'll just talk about it. If you're the Colts, or if you're the Patriots, or if you're whatever team wants Wentz, how do you view his whatever's going on that's causing him to not play well, even though we clearly have seen him play at an MVP level? It's not physical. I really don't think it's physical. Yes, he's had injuries before, but I don't think it's the injuries that are making him play poorly. I think it's mental. And I think most people would agree with that at this point. If you're the Colts, do you think that it's just solely like Nick Foles Eagles based, and if you get him into a new environment, you can change that? Or do you view it as this guy's kind of a small town kid? He played at North Dakota State University or something like that.
Yeah.
Came on, never has been that leader type of guy. We've clearly seen it when that's what Foles was that Wentz wasn't. And I still have the opinion that if Wentz was the quarterback of that Eagles team, they probably lose that Super Bowl. Maybe they don't even make it.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe they don't even make it.
I really feel strongly about that. And at the time, as a Patriots fan, I was hoping we were going to play the Eagles, because I was like, man, it's Nick Foles, like it's garbage. And in the conference championship, I was like, all right, so what, we either play Case Keenum or Nick Foles. Like, I mean,
yeah,
you can't get any like luckier with that one. But I mean, we lost. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you think that it's a Wentz problem or an Eagles/Foles problem? Do you think it can be fixed?
I think it's an Eagles problem. And look, there's definitely blame for Wentz. I think his mechanics and his physical attributes have definitely taken a dip, but I think it stems from the mental part. And it seems like the lack in confidence over the years. I really think that Super Bowl really weighs on him. Like, I think people are now starting to talk about it, but last year and even the year before, I don't think people are talking about it as much, because he was going to be the MVP of the league. The Eagles were definitely one of the best teams in the league that year. And look, who knows if they would have won to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, who knows? But they definitely had a good chance of doing it. And he gets injured. Foles comes in and wins the Super Bowl, and then there was even a conversation of who should be the starter going into the next year. And, obviously it seemed like Wentz was definitely going to be the guy. But I think all of that, the conversation, Foles coming in and winning it, I think that really had an impact on him. And then the injuries, like again, he tore the ACL that year, then he had the back injury, and then he's had a couple, like an arm, a shoulder, he had a concussion last year. So I think all of that is just come down on him, and I think he needs to get away from the Eagles. I think if he goes to the Colts would be the perfect situation. I think he'd turn back into a top 10 player if he goes to the Colts.
That's what I think too, but
Like
it's
no
also
doubt
pretty
about it.
risky. It's
It's definitely risky because the people you had to trade for him, you probably wouldn't have to trade as much because the contract's so big, but you definitely have to trade something valuable, and you take a contract that big where if he doesn't work out, then you're definitely stuck with that contract. There's no way you can move that contract at that point. So it's definitely a risk.
yeah, it's a huge risk because, and I don't know how much you would have to give up. It really depends on what teams want him. If only the Colts actually are seriously interested in him, then you might just get away with only having to give up a sixth or a seventh or literally nothing. Who knows?
Well, I think I almost feel like it had to be a little bit more than that. No, a 6th-round pick. I know the contract's terrible.
The
And if Mount
contract
plays
is
well,
horrible.
but I
Okay, so
mean,
next in
wow, 6th-round
2021,
pick though.
well, yeah, but who wants this contract? I mean, so unless you're willing to like take on some like I don't know, like so the cap hit next year is 35, it's 34 and a half, then 31, then 36, then 32. So his
Yeah, I know.
contract goes through 2024, like
I mean, the contract extension I think starts
next
going
year.
into next year, which is, I
Yes.
mean, that's crazy to think about.
A $34 million cap hit, $34.5 million.
And the dead cap's like 60 million or something like that.
That's not something that if I'm a team that's, if I'm making this trade, like I want to be at least 90% sure that Wentz is going to be a top 10 quarterback. At least 90%.
Well, I think that's why the Colts are the only destination. I think the Patriots could be, is Belichick, it's the Patriots, everything like that. But I really think the Colts are, because we said this last week that Frank Reich is their head coach. He was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles. The Colts are a good team. They have a pretty good offensive line, maybe one of the best in the league. They have a really good defense. Now their offensive weapons aren't amazing, but I think with Wentz in there, he'd make them better. And as you could see with Phillip Rivers, they're a playoff team, and they could maybe win their division and have 11 wins. I think if Wentz was
They
in
could
there,
even make the conference championship game.
they
Who
they
knows?
definitely could, depending on who they play. If they don't face the Chiefs before that, they definitely could.
I mean, if
And
they could play Titans Bills or something. I mean, I'm sorry, they could play like Titans Steelers or something. Like,
yeah, they'd definitely hope for that. They definitely hope they'd face the Steelers,
and then another team that
Bills.
probably isn't the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bills are definitely the biggest threat to the Chiefs. But you definitely rather play the Bills than the Chiefs before the conference championship game. But I think if Wentz was on that team going into next year, I think they'd be one of the top teams. I mean, look, you'd have to see how he'd play, but just knowing the situation that he's coming from and then going into, they definitely be one of the top teams if he can perform, go back not into MVP level, but definitely be a top 10 quarterback. Then yeah, they definitely be a top team.
I thought the Patriots would be a super interesting team, but I agree with you that the Colts are probably the only legitimate team, or at least that I can think of right now. The reason I don't think the Pats are legitimate is I don't think Wentz is a guy that Belichick would be into, and I don't think he wants to pay his quarterback really anything. I think he either wants a cheap veteran that he can kind of build, which is kind of what he tried with Newton, or he wants a young guy. I don't think he's interested in Carson Wentz's contract, so I don't think it'd work out. And yeah, I don't think Belichick would be really like Wentz that much. So, and it's not worth the risk at all. As the Pats, it's not. As the Colts, maybe it is more worth it because you know more about Wentz, especially with Reich as your head coach. I don't know what Reich thinks about him. And I'm curious. It's a very interesting question, actually. If I could ask him one question, that's what I mean. Stupid question, but like if I could only ask him one question, I don't know what else I'd want to ask him, but I'd ask him that. I'd be like, "What do you think about Carson Wentz?"
Yeah, because if he's on their team going to next year, then they're a top 3 or 4 team in the AFC, in my mind, at least. Again, he'd have to perform, but I think they would be. And if Like, I think they're the only team that, like, I think it's worth the risk for them if they believe in him. If it really just comes down to Frank Reich. If he believes that he can fix him and get him back to what he was, at least somewhat what he was, then I think you have to do it, because they're a team that if you add a quarterback like that, they can get to the Super Bowl. And if you just keep trying to go with these bridge quarterbacks or like veterans, you're just not going to be able to get there. You may win a playoff game, but you're not going to get much further than that, especially with the Chiefs in the AFC. You're not going to be able to beat the Chiefs without having that kind of quarterback, or your defense would just have to be absolutely lights out.
Yeah, the Colts defense is great, but it's not to the point. You'd have to have like a 2015 Broncos defense type of thing. And even the Broncos defense, it was great, but they had to elevate in the playoffs clearly to carry that type of quarterback. And Phillip Rivers isn't what Manning was in 2015, but I mean, they need an actual quarterback that can make plays to win a game. Rivers can keep you in games, but he's not going to keep up with Mahomes. And I think Wentz definitely can. Wentz could even have the potential to outplay Mahomes and not consistently, but in one playoff game in the AFC Championship, in a game that has a lot of pressure and weather, who knows? It's January, February, like you never know. Yeah, I think I'm curious though, because if Wentz isn't on the or on the Colts next year, then you'd have to assume it's because Reich doesn't like Wentz. Because if Reich does like Wentz, I mean, you would trade for him in a heartbeat, right? He's not old.
Yeah,
he's 27 right now. He's 27.
He's basically entering his prime.
He's basically in his prime right now, and his contract goes until he's 31. So you would not have any of him in his out of his prime. Now, maybe injuries have something to do with that. I don't think. Okay, well, in terms of Wentz, I don't think if you're the Colts, I don't think you say no to this trade because of the injury concerns. If you're saying no to this trade, at least in my mind, it's because you actually don't like Wentz in general. You think the mental is not there in general, and you don't think it was an Eagle problem. You think it was more of a Wentz problem. And I think that might be what Reich thinks. I'm not sure if Reich thinks that, but maybe he thinks, Foles ultimately was not as talented, but he had balls and he got the job done. And ultimately Wentz didn't. And even though Wentz is much more talented, has a bigger arm, has a bigger frame, he's just not as mentally strong. And I'm curious though. I'm curious to see what happens with Wentz.
Well, I think the one thing also is that, and I heard this before, and it's kind of what you were saying. He played North Dakota State, which is small. He's always been, from like a small town, small community. And you go to Philly, where it's a lot bigger, it's city. And look, he's been there a couple of years, but he probably just doesn't really fit in Philly culture than he would if he was in Indianapolis, where it's more laid back. It's not as much media. It's probably
not as
more,
much, but there's still going to be a good amount.
Yeah, but it's not compared to Philly though. It's not the same.
For sure.
The city and the people in the city, the cultures of the city, especially where he comes from and what his lifestyle is. Indianapolis fits him like perfectly in that sense, which I think that would help his mental aspect also.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Philly's like top 10, top 5 most like grumpy fan bases with like annoying media.
Top 5, it's like number 1, bro.
It might be. I mean, I would say New York is like more pressure-y and stuff like that. Like, I mean, it's New York. I would even say right now, I mean, I don't know, like the walking into the Patriots job after Tom Brady leaves probably gonna get you more. You'll probably be under more pressure with that, but yeah, I mean, yeah, Philly's up there. I mean, if not number 1. We'll move off Wentz though. I mean, I think we hashed that out. We'll talk about the ex-quarterback of the New England Patriots, arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. TB12, off the bye. Bucks, Vikings. Bucks won 26-14. This game should have been so much closer. I don't know if you watched this game or not. I'm assuming you probably did, or at least watch a little bit of it. Dan Bailey, ex-Cowboys kicker, he went 0 for 3 on field goals, and I think he missed an extra point, maybe 2. I think 1. Yeah, I think only 1 extra point he missed.
No, he missed 1, yeah.
So he missed 3 field goals and an extra point. By the way, none of them were even close. It was bad. This game should have been a lot closer. I mean, I don't know what you think about that. Like, I want to get into the Bucks and stuff, and I want to get into maybe some Cousins, but I mean, the first thing I took away from this game is, wow, Dan Bailey is horrible. And wasn't there at a point where he had technically had like the highest field goal percentage history in the NFL all time?
Yeah, no, there was
And
a
then the
couple of years ago.
Cowboys. Actually, I'm curious. Why did do you know why the Cowboys moved off of him? Because I mean, I didn't ever follow the Cowboys at the time. It was kind of surprising to me to see them move off of him for some guy that I didn't really know very well.
Well, they moved off him because he had a couple injuries like the season before. He'd been getting a couple injuries and he wasn't as effective as he was. Like he was automatic, like 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. Like he was just automatic. Like you knew he was going to make it. He was always pretty good at like 50-yard plus. Especially being in the dome, it always helped. So and I think he was number one in percentage from kickers. I'm pretty sure he was number one at some point. I'm
And this
pretty
was
sure Justin.
before, I think this might have been before absolute prime Justin Tucker. Like I think Tucker
Yeah,
was
like
drafted
Justin Tucker is number one now, but he was. I think he was like 89%, 90%, something like that
yeah.
from percentage wise. But they cut him because I think he wasn't being as effective as he was earlier, and he was pretty good with the Vikings. Like I think it's just like his third year with them. I want to
Yeah,
say.
I want to say that too. I want to say they had. I don't think he was he the signing right after Blair Walsh? I don't think so. Maybe he
No,
was
he
though.
was signed in. So we cut him going into 2018. We cut him,
Okay.
and I don't even really think he was kicking for anyone until like halfway through the season. I think the Vikings signed him like maybe they signed him right after. It was either they signed him like right after or it was like halfway through the season. But he's been with the Vikings since 2018,
Yeah,
and
anyways, no,
he's
like I see what you're saying because he was not a problem really. I mean, until
no, he really wasn't.
recently.
But like looking at the game, you're right. I mean that. I guess technically it wouldn't have mattered because that's 10 points worth and they still would have lost. But at the
Whoa.
time, yeah, but like at the
Yeah.
time it was huge because I mean he missed. I think it was from 36, like 45 and 54, something like that. It
Like
was the
why I was so some of those field goal calls I was a little bit confused by. The 54 one was I was kind of confused because I think he had already missed two field goals at that point and the extra point. Um, why even? Why don't you just punt it there? I mean, like, because the 36 yarder wasn't even like close. For a 36 yarder, it wasn't close. The 45 yarder, whatever it was, also was not close at all. At all.
well the only thing for the 54 yarder. I mean it was 4th and 15, so
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that you punt there and just pin the offense at. Maybe you don't have any confidence in the punter either. I don't know, but I would
yeah.
rather because I don't want to give Brady and the Bucks. And it's not like that offense had even looked like outstanding this game. It really wasn't. It did not look. It didn't have that click feeling like we were talking about earlier. It did not click in this game, in my opinion. Um, I would have much rather preferred pinning them on inside the 10 or whatever. Maybe you get lucky and pin them on the 3 or something. But yeah, I mean, like, did anybody really think that 54 yarder was going to go in? And obviously, hindsight's 2020. It didn't go in.
I mean it wasn't even close though.
It wasn't close. Yeah, I don't know.
It
I
started
mean,
off like right and it stayed right the entire time. It was never even going in.
I wonder
So
if Bailey gets cut or not. I mean, it's.
I would
I
say
feel like he
no.
has
He
to,
has
but
to.
I feel like he has to. But at the same time, like, if you were going to cut him, like, wouldn't you have not sent him out for that 54 yarder? Like, I feel like sending him out for that 54 yarder shows you have a little bit of confidence in him, and maybe missing
Well,
that's the last straw. But
again, the 54 yarder was the second missed field goal that he had.
or was it
So
the 45 that was the third?
the 40, I think it was 45 or 46. That was a third, but it was so. The only thing is that it was first. They'd first and goal, then they had an incomplete pass, and then two straight sacks. So it was 4th and goal from the 28-yard line. And at that point, it was 26-14. So you're thinking, I mean, I guess it's still a two possession game, even if no, it was actually 23-14 at that point. So, a field goal gets you to 6 points.
Yeah, I remember.
At
Okay,
the
now I'm
24.
sorry. I remember now. Yeah, they had gotten the 2 point conversion. Yeah, which made it 23-14. The field goal would have made it a single score game, and you missed it.
But yeah, I mean, those you can't take those two sacks anyways. But talking about the Bucks though, so I've been high on the Bucks. They've bbeen my pick to get to the NFC Championship at the least. I think going into the playoffs, we'll see how these next couple weeks go. If they start clicking, like this game, they really didn't come out as I expected them to. I expected them to come out kind of just like guns blazing, and they'd be much more on track than what they've been these last couple weeks. They really weren't that. They kind of played a sloppy game, honestly. It's not like they really had turnovers or anything, but they just didn't seem like they were in. They didn't have any really momentum. They didn't really seem like they had any like they were in like a groove or anything like that.
Yeah.
Through the entire game. Now, Brady had that great throw to Scotty Miller, that 48-yard touchdown. That was a great throw by Brady.
That was a very nice throw, and it was a nice contrast to the past like 20 throws of 15 yards or more downfield that Brady's missed. I mean, it was early in that game. Brady had a couple misses, bad misses. I think he had Godwin wide open, missed that. I forget there was another one too. He missed Gronk on. He had Gronk on that. Oh, Gronk was open.
Gronk was open on that.
After the Gronk play, especially, actually, I was just thinking like, wow, like Brady's accuracy is diminished. And I mean, that Scotty Miller play was definitely nice to see, and it doesn't take the point away that Brady's accuracy is diminished, because it has. I don't know how much worse it's going to get. Like, I mean, if he does miss those, if he's going to miss 2 to 3 open wide receivers a game, that's not good. That's not good at all.
That's not gonna. He's gonna have to be much better in that. But I did think he played a decent game. Maybe not. He definitely wasn't a great game that he played, but I thought he played pretty decent. And
yeah, he played fine. I think he played fine.
He played good enough to where I think if they were to play like a better opponent, I think he could definitely do more. Like if he were to fix a couple mistakes, then he could be the reason why they won the game. But against a team like the Vikings, and where the Bucks defense was getting pretty gashed in that first half. I think Cook had like 100 yards like halfway through the second quarter, but they really came in. They forced a couple turnovers. Obviously, the missed field goals really helped, especially because field position, because they would get the ball at like the 30, 40-yard line every time. But I thought this was the start of what I believe is going to be them winning the rest of their schedule out. Again, they go Falcons, Lions, Falcons. I mean, that's a pretty easy schedule. And I think these are 3 games where they can get Brady going, get him ready for the playoffs. And I picked them to be my 5 seed, and I think they definitely can be the 5 seed. And they can definitely make the NFC Championship game if they can get going. They need to get going. If they don't get going over these next 3 games, it's going to be tough, because Brady's not going to be rolling, and he's not going to be in playoff mode, no matter what he says or what Arian says. But if they can get going over these next 3 games, their defense is going to be fine. It really just comes down to the offense and what Brady can do with Evans, Godwin, Brown, Gronk, Ronald Jones. Leonard Fournette was a healthy scratch, which is just crazy to think that.
I was never big on the Leonard Fournette signing. He's never been great either. I never put any stock into him. I know people might have, but I never really did. I think that has come across relatively clearly in this show. I've been a Ronald Jones guy, and I'm not even a Ronald Jones guy. I've liked Jones more than Fournette. Don't like either though. I think having some guy like a James White, or even just somebody that can catch the ball out of the backfield, is so nice, especially for an older quarterback. I guess in this game off the bye, I was kind of just hoping that, this was the game where they click. And, so in 2014, they lost to the Chiefs in week 4. The Pats were 2-2. This was the Revis year when they beat the Seahawks. The next game, the onto Cincinnati game, I feel like they clicked that game. And the Bengals weren't like an awesome opponent, but they were like not necessarily the worst in the NFL. They came out and they destroyed them. They looked awesome. I was kind of hoping for something like that this week, and I feel like I got more of like a baby step game. Like, nice job, you guys are making baby steps towards it. I'm gonna have to see something in the next 3 weeks though, for me to wanna, when we do our predictions for like the Super Bowl and stuff, for me to pick them to go there. I'm like, this can't be the most I see.
They're going to have to play better.
Yeah. And I think, these last 3 weeks, I mean, could you draw better opponents? Like this is easy. If you lose any of these games, that's a bad sign. Really bad sign. You really want to win these last 3. Maybe the last game of the year doesn't matter if you've already clinched whatever spot, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you'll have to play that game out.
Yeah, I don't think 10-6 is going to get you that 5 seed. You're going to have to go at least 11-5, which means them winning out.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. Maybe they could go 10-6. I don't know, whatever. But I don't think they'll be in a spot where their position in the seeding is clinched and not able to be moved. So I think they'll have to play that last game. But yeah, I mean, really, and Aikman said at some point in the broadcast, he was like, a lot of stars, one ball or something like that. I mean, you just it's all got to click. And I don't know when that's going to be, but over the next 3 weeks, and I've said this before, this offense has to get it going at some point for me to justify picking them to get to even the conference championship or Super Bowl or something like that. So, and ultimately, last thing, the Bucks definitely want to get that 5 seed for obvious reasons. You want to play the NFC East winner without a doubt, right? Like,
I would say yeah, unless that team, whoever it is, Washington or New York, is. I mean, you definitely don't want to play Washington right now because of that defense, but I mean, you definitely rather play Washington over the other teams, I would say.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying is like, no matter how good they play these last 3 weeks, there's no team you'd rather play the Reds or the Washington football team over any other team in the playoff picture right now, I'd assume.
Yeah, I would say so.
So yeah, I guess we can wrap it up there. I don't know if there's any other games that you necessarily wanted to cover or not. Me, not necessarily. There were some other solid games, but really nothing that changed anything up. I mean, obviously we didn't necessarily talk about it, but the Washington football team did beat the 49ers. So they have the lead in the division. They have a 1-game lead over the Giants. Actually, sorry, half game, right?
Half game, yeah.
So yeah, obviously the Packers. We said the Packers won, so they now have sole possession of the number 1 seed. Don't think there was much else really. Did we talk about Chiefs Dolphins really that much? I don't think we did. No, we did.
I mean,
Well, we kind of did.
Talked a little bit about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more so we talked Chiefs more. I think we both had the Dolphins missing the playoffs, so
yeah.
It's
we didn't
more,
talk about the Dolphins that much, but yeah, I mean, we talked about them last episode. So
yeah, and it's more just this is a good year that they had so far, and if they miss the playoffs, I think they could look at it as a positive. So
yeah, I mean, obviously you want to make the playoffs, but yeah. But that's really all. I think tomorrow's game / today's game, whenever you guys have seen this, we're recording this. It's currently 1:10 in the morning, but so technically today's game, Ravens Browns. I mean, that's going to be a big game.
yeah, it's gonna be a huge game.
Before we go, I mean, what do you think's happening in that game?
Well, I think the Ravens are going to run the table in these last couple weeks, and I think the Browns are going to fall if you look at their schedules. So yeah, I mean, I'm going Ravens. I think the Ravens, that win over the Cowboys, I think just and getting all their players back and healthy from the COVID list and everything like that, I think the Ravens are going to be one of the best teams in the AFC going into the playoffs. So yeah, I think they win this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the Ravens win this game. I would be surprised if the Browns won. I'd still think the Ravens are the better team here. I don't love the Browns. We've talked about it many times, though, so I'll wrap it up. That's it. We're probably going to come out with another episode, tomorrow, potentially, about the NBA. So.
Yeah, one's going to come out soon about the NBA and everything else that's been going on. But yeah, there's gonna be a lot more episodes coming out in these next couple, 2 weeks when NBA starts, MLB free agency. Still none of the big guys have signed, but they're going to sign for most likely at some point this month, I would assume. So, and then the playoffs are going to start for NFL. So a lot of stuff's going to be happening.
Yeah, NFL playoffs, start of the NBA season. We're going to do like predictions. So, award predictions, playoff predictions, stuff like that. We'll probably give our super way too early finals winner, finals champion. We'll probably talk about the Christmas games at some point too. There are Christmas games this year. So, we'll probably talk about those. So,
yeah, we'll talk about all that stuff.
All right. That's it. We'll see you guys soon.